So can you please state your name and your date of birth?
Sure, my name is Grant Francis, and I was born on November 22nd, 1941. That makes me 80 years old, and I'm loving it. I spent my first 20 years in Westchester.
Here in
And
California?
right up the hill from Venice. Went to Westchester High School and loved it. My second 20 years, I moved to Venice because I got a job at Venice High School. And my roots kind of got deep into Venice.
You talk about your first memories and first experiences.
Let's start with POP. I loved going there. A bunch of us guys would get in our bikes and ride down to POP and spend the day just going through all the stuff. There's a lot of kids there, and they had rides for everybody. And it was like a Disneyland, but you didn't have to pay the price or go the distance, because it was right down the street. And it was very memorable. It was a lot of fun. And you get to know the kids. You hang out, and you go back again. And around the pier, you didn't have to go inside, but there was a hangout. You could go and ride your bike, and they had the bike path, So anyway, it was a hangout, and everybody enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And then in like later 60s, they took the place down. The whole pier. Part of it burned down, but they took the whole pier down. Well, I went down there with some of my students, and we grabbed a bunch of lumber that the pier was made out of. And they're big, like the cars would drive on it, so it had to be pretty good lumber. So a 3x12, I took the wood back to my wood shop at Venice High, and we made projects out of the POP pier wood. So that was my first real connection to Venice and POP, because I connected the pier with the school. I started teaching at Venice in 1966. And at that time, there were 11 shops that a kid could take, mostly guys. It was integrated. I think it was one of the only schools that I recall back then that was naturally integrated. Now, the only problem with that is that there were some conflicts between the gangs, Venice gang and the Culver City gang. But when they came to Venice High, it was kind of like a DMZ, like a demilitarized zone. And it was no, we aren't going to fight here because we're here to learn. They had fights off campus, because they had differences of opinion or whatever. But I remember it from being naturally integrated, which meant there were a lot of deep roots in families, parents who went to Venice High School or grandparents who went to Venice High School, and it's still that way. And I'm involved with the Alumni Association, and I see this, I hear this all the time. People are in the Alumni Association and have deep roots at Venice because their parents and grandparents have lived here and they went to the same school. So Venice has deep roots with families. I taught stage crew at Venice High School. And I'd take my students home sometimes. We'd have work nights, and I'd take them home. And I'd take the kids down into Venice, where they lived, and some of them were a little hesitant. Hey, Mr. Francis, I don't know if you should be down here at night. They were cautious about my safety in going into their neighborhood once it was dark. Venice was not that well thought about. I mean, Abbot Kinney did a lot. He brought the railroad down, and people would spend time at his little enclave, which became Venice later. But they'd get back on the railroad and leave. They wouldn't come to Venice because it wasn't a great place to live. Great place to hang out at Abbot Kinney's, all this little amusement park and whatever, but they went back to LA on the red car. So, therefore Venice has transformed from being low class to high class over a generation, let's say. Like this, it took a while The chairman of the art department at the time was Harry Weinbrenner, and principal said, we need a statue out in front of the school. Because we're just start off, this Venice High started about the same time, 1911. So he got in touch with one of his favorite students and use her as the model for this statue. Well, her name was Myrna, but it was Myrna Williams. As time went by, she became famous, became a movie star from this little model that she was in high school, and changed her name to Myrna Loy. He actually made it out of like a plaster, and it became deteriorated. And every year, the kids from Westchester High School would come and paint Myrna Loy red. The kids from Hamilton would come over and paint Myrna Loy green. The people from Palisades would paint it blue. All these other schools would come and paint Myrna Loy out. That was like a little prank.
Like a rivalry prank.
Yeah, exactly. Rivalry. And I don't think it mattered who won the football game, but we got to get them anyway. Whether we win or whether, got to go out and paint. And that was a tradition. Year after year, they'd come back to paint it back white again. You know, the student government, whoever, they back and paint it white. And I remember chipping the paint away, and there's like about 3/4 of thickness of paint. And each row you could see a white and a red and a blue and a white and a red and a white and a blue and a white and a green and a white. All these layers of paint on the statue. It was, like I say, it was 3/4 inch thick of paint. Year after year after year, painting Myrna Loy out again. It's funny, we worked on, in 70s, we worked on the movie Grease. A lot of my students worked on Grease. And of course, what's cool about that, it was an old-time movie. I mean, you know, about high school and kids in that era. And of course, the people who played the role of the students of Venice High School were much older, you know, but they made it look like they're kids, you know, high school kids. So a lot of my students got paid to work on the movie, building some of the props and some of the set pieces and everything for the movie. So they got to see, you know, John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John were supposed to be high school kids, you know, but here they were adults essentially. And what was cool about that is my high school kids were able to talk. Olivia Newton-John, as soon as they did a cut, she'd take off to her trailer. But Travolta was cool, and he wasn't cool yet. He was just starting out. So he hung out. As soon as they're finished, he'd talk with the kids. Hey, what's up? And how you doing? How do you like your classes? Or whatever. And of course, they're all in stage crew. And so they were talking about the stuff that they did on the set. You know, we helped do that over there. And so he's going, whoa. And so he spent a lot of time talking to them. And then at my retirement party, they had an auction. And they auctioned off some of the stuff that we had collected. And one of the things, I got to keep the Rydell High School sign that was covered up the Venice High School sign. And I you know, so I helped make it. So it was hanging up in my room for years, you know, in room 1 in the auditorium. So there was a couple of teachers that loved that idea, and they brought their kids to see the Rydell High sign in my classroom. He says, yeah, Grease was shot here at Venice High, and there's the Rydell High sign. So that's a great another little story about the students and where they went, and the connection that they still have with the school. So that was kind of another cool thing that happened. By seeing the pictures and seeing the displays that they put out, it shows them that what Venice used to be, and I think it's important. You got to know your roots, you know. And what I like about the whole thing is the youngsters are enjoying this. It's not always the old people. The youngsters are coming by and looking at the pictures and asking questions. And Abbott Kinney was a real person. You know, I know the street. I know there's a cool restaurant down there, but I didn't know that he was a guy. He's a man, and he actually started Venice. It's cool. So they learn by seeing all this stuff at the display. And some of them even get involved. Either they'll do a donation, or they'll buy a T-shirt or some memorabilia or some merchandise we have. So that's a connection that's very cool.
And what do you think are a couple of things that people just don't know about Venice that they're going to learn? Like people who are not from here?
Well, I don't know, maybe hippies and beatniks, you know, Venice used to be that kind of a community years ago. And the things that they have, you know, late coffee houses would stay open until 2 o'clock in the morning, and people would hang out and read poetry, and it was just a whole different culture, completely different. And that's what Venice was. And when you look at some of the stuff and you read about what it was, I think it builds your character. It lets you think about way things used to be, and it makes things. I think it makes things better for everybody to relive to know your history. Yeah.